We don't need just a pretty face around here. Sweetheart, that was the first sentence Caleb Monroe ever said to me. I looked up from my monitor slowly. Not because I was shocked, but because I wanted to remember his face exactly as it was in that moment. The expensive navy suit, the perfect haircut, the lazy smile of a man who had never had to prove he belonged in any room he entered. Behind him, the glass door of the executive office was still swinging shut. That was when I understood. Caleb Monroe was the son of Adrian Monroe, the new CEO of Northbridge Dynamics, which meant this arrogant stranger was not just passing through. He was now part of the leadership team. If you believe that one thoughtless remark from the CEO's son could bring down an entire billion-dollar technology company, then like this video before the story is fully revealed, and don't forget to let me know where you're listening from and what the temperature is there right now. Oh, and I should probably introduce myself first. My name is Hannah Cole. I was 34 years old, and I had spent 7 years building the intelligent systems that kept Northbridge alive. I was not an assistant. I was not decoration. I was the principal systems architect behind the adaptive AI framework, running every major product the company sold. But Caleb did not know that, to him. I was a woman at a desk, quiet enough to underestimate and young enough to dismiss. I did not argue. I did not defend myself. I had learned a long time ago that insecure men enjoyed resistance because it made them feel powerful. So I simply closed my laptop. Caleb frowned, as if my silence annoyed him more than any insult could have. "Relax," he said with a small laugh. "You'll do fine here if you learn to smile." I reached for the framed photo beside my keyboard, then my conference mug, then the small notebook where I kept personal design sketches, because while Caleb was still talking, I was already thinking about the 6 patents that made this company worth billions, and none of them belonged to him. A small note: this story is a work of fiction, created with the support of artificial intelligence to make it more emotional and meaningful. Now, let's continue. By the time I reached my apartment, my hands were steady again. I set my bag on the kitchen counter, made a cup of black coffee, and opened the locked folder on my personal laptop. Inside were the documents Caleb Monroe had no idea existed. 6 patent files, not company drafts, not internal proposals, real patent applications, filed under my name, with my attorney's signature, my development records, and years of time-stamped work behind them. 3 years earlier, when Northbridge Dynamics had nearly lost its largest government contract, I built the first version of the adaptive intelligence engine on my own equipment. After hours, while everyone else was still arguing over budgets, the company needed the system fast, but they did not want to pay for a full transfer yet. So, my lawyer created a temporary licensing structure. Northbridge could use the technology internally. I would retain ownership until a formal purchase agreement was signed. That agreement never happened. There had always been excuses. The finance department needed another quarter. The board wanted to wait until the next valuation. The previous CEO promised we would circle back after the platform proved itself in the market. It proved itself more than anyone expected. The adaptive AI engine became the brain behind their flagship analytics products. The predictive compression protocol made their systems faster than competitors. The dynamic security layer protected client data across every major deployment. Those 3 inventions, along with the remaining patent families connected to them, were the invisible foundation under Northbridge's billion-dollar reputation. And they were still mine. I opened the license folder and read the renewal date again. 9 days away. Caleb could mock me. Adrian Monroe could parade his son through the office like a new king. The board could call it modernization, restructuring, or whatever polished word they wanted. But no one in that building owned the heart of the machine. They had permission to use it. Permission could expire. And after what Caleb had said to me, I was no longer interested in being generous. The next morning, I arrived before most of the office lights had warmed to full brightness. Northbridge always felt different early in the day. Quieter, more honest. No executive voices echoing through glass rooms. No forced smiles near the coffee machine. No performance disguised as leadership, just the low hum of servers and the soft tapping of keyboards from the few engineers who still believed work mattered more than politics. But that morning, something was off. The first sign was the conference room. Caleb was inside with two men I had never seen before. They were dressed like consultants, the expensive kind who said very little but billed by the hour. On the screen behind them was a diagram of the adaptive AI engine. My diagram. The one I had created 18 months earlier for internal architecture review. Caleb pointed at it with a marker like he understood what he was seeing. I stopped walking. One of the senior engineers, Daniel Price, stood beside the display with his arms folded tightly across his chest. He looked uncomfortable. When his eyes met mine through the glass wall, he looked away too quickly. That told me enough. At my desk, I opened my inbox. 3 calendar invitations were waiting for me, all scheduled without my approval, all titled with phrases like Knowledge Transfer Review, Core Systems Documentation, and Framework Continuity Planning. The organizer was Caleb Monroe. The attendees included senior engineers, the 2 unknown consultants, and several new executives from Adrian Monroe's transition team. My name was not on the attendee list. 10 minutes later, a message popped up from Maya, one of our junior developers. Hannah, did you approve external access to the core repository? I stared at the screen. No, I typed. Who requested it? Her reply came almost immediately. Caleb said leadership cleared it. He said you were aware, for a second. The office around me went silent. Not literally. People were still talking, keyboards were still clicking, phones were still ringing. But something inside me became very still. This was not modernization. This was not onboarding. This was an attempt to map my system, copy its structure, and make my ownership disappear before anyone noticed. So I did what Caleb should have feared most. I started documenting everything. By Wednesday, Northbridge's internal channels were flooded with one word: Helix. Project Helix was supposed to be the product that changed everything. For 18 months. Our teams had worked toward its launch. It was an AI-driven analytics platform built to process live data from hospitals, logistics networks, financial systems, and energy grids in real time. Clients could see patterns before failures happened. Executives could make decisions before delays became disasters. That was the pitch. But beneath the polished dashboards, animated graphs, and expensive marketing language, Helix had one real engine, mine. Without my adaptive intelligence framework, Helix was nothing more than a beautiful interface waiting for a brain. The compression protocol made the live data streams fast enough to be useful. The security layer made the platform safe enough for enterprise clients. The learning engine made it powerful enough to justify the billion-dollar valuation Adrian Monroe kept whispering to investors. At 10 in the morning, the entire company was called into the main auditorium. Adrian stood on stage in a charcoal suit, speaking smoothly about a new era of innovation. Caleb stood beside him, smiling like a prince being introduced to his future kingdom. Behind them, a giant screen showed the Helix logo rotating above the words, "Built for the future." My name was nowhere, not in the technical acknowledgments, not in the product history, not in the leadership slide. Caleb stepped forward and began talking about streamlining old systems, removing outdated dependencies, and bringing Northbridge's technology fully in-house. That phrase made my stomach tighten. Fully in-house. It sounded harmless to anyone outside a legal department. To me, it sounded deliberate. He was not just claiming operational control. He was trying to create the impression that Northbridge owned every essential piece of Helix outright. I glanced across the room and saw Daniel lower his eyes. He knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. Adrian praised Caleb's strategic vision 3 times in 15 minutes. Then Caleb thanked the teams who helped assemble the foundation. Assemble. Not invent. Not design. Not build. That was when I understood the real plan. They were not simply trying to launch Helix. They were trying to erase the person who made it possible, that night. I did not go home when the elevators emptied. I waited until the office became quiet enough to hear the ventilation system humming above the ceiling panels. The consultants left first, carrying branded notebooks and pretending not to notice me. Then the executives disappeared behind private cars and tinted glass. By midnight, Northbridge Dynamics belonged to the night crew, the servers, and me. I sat at my desk and opened my personal laptop. Not the company workstation, not the network machine. Mine, one by one. I pulled up the original development archives for the Adaptive Intelligence Framework, the earliest prototypes, the failed tests, the handwritten logic notes I had scanned years ago, the version control history from my private repository. Every commit had a timestamp. Every file carried metadata. Every major breakthrough connected back to my own equipment, my own licenses, my own cloud storage, and nights when Northbridge had not paid me $1 for the invention itself. I checked the device IDs against purchase receipts. I matched draft diagrams to patent filings. I compared internal license letters with the renewal schedule. Then I created 3 encrypted backups. One went to a secure server in Oregon. One went to a private storage node in Toronto. The third went overseas, where no rushed corporate order from Adrian Monroe could reach it before my attorney did. At 1:26 a.m., I wrote to my patent lawyer. Evelyn Hart, subject immediate enforcement preparation. Evelyn, I wrote. Northbridge leadership appears to be copying architecture, expanding external access, and representing licensed technology as internally owned. I am attaching development records, patent materials, license history, access concerns, and relevant screenshots. Please prepare notice language for termination and unauthorized use. I reread the message twice before sending it. My hands were cold, but my mind was clear. Caleb thought power meant walking into a room and making people feel small. I knew better. Real power was documentation, timing, ownership, and silence, and I had all 4. On Monday morning, the courier arrived at 9:58. I saw him step out of the elevator, holding a flat white envelope with Evelyn Hart's office seal printed in the corner. He walked to reception, spoke quietly to the assistant, and within 30 seconds, the envelope was moving toward the executive wing. I did not move from my desk. At 10:04, my phone rang. Private number. I let it ring until it stopped. Then came the message from Adrian Monroe's office. Conference room B. Immediately, when I entered, Adrian was standing at the head of the table with the notice spread open in front of him. Caleb sat beside him, jaw tight, one hand resting on a folder thick enough to insult me before it was even opened. Mark Feld, Northbridge's general counsel, was also there, silent and pale. Adrian tapped the document. What exactly is this? Hannah, a formal notice. I said, Northbridge no longer has authorization to use my patented components in Helix unless a new licensing agreement is executed. Caleb gave a short laugh. Your components? You built them while working here. I built them under a licensing arrangement your legal department has recognized for years. Mark cleared his throat softly. She's correct. The company has been operating under internal license letters pending transfer. Adrian's face hardened. Caleb slid the folder toward me, then signed the transfer. Today, we launch tomorrow. I looked at the folder, but I did not touch it. Send it to my attorney. Caleb leaned forward. You are seriously going to threaten this company 24 hours before the biggest launch in its history? I am not threatening the company. I said, I'm enforcing ownership. Adrian's voice dropped. If Helix fails because of this, that will be on you. No, I said quietly. If Helix fails, it will be because you tried to launch a product built on technology you never purchased. For the first time, Caleb stopped smiling. I left conference room B without looking back. My badge still worked. My desk was still there. People were still walking past with coffee cups and nervous smiles, pretending the building had not just shifted underneath them. That was the strange thing about corporate emergencies. From the outside, everything looked normal right up until the moment it collapsed. I sat down, opened my personal laptop, and reviewed Evelyn's instructions one final time. Do not touch Northbridge systems. Do not alter company code. Do not interfere with active users. Only revoke access to services, keys, and remote endpoints that belong to me. So that was exactly what I did. At 10:41 a.m., I sent a written notice to Adrian, Mark Feld, and Evelyn. I stated that, effective immediately, I was disabling access to all privately owned authentication gateways and adaptive security services covered under my patent portfolio. I also stated that I would maintain full forensic logs showing every action taken. Then I began. First, I rotated the primary API keys connected to my private gateway. Second, I disabled the legacy fallback token Northbridge had been using during development. Third, I revoked the Helix service account from the external authentication layer hosted on my infrastructure. It took less than 1 minute. No screens went black. No client data disappeared. No servers crashed. Existing cached sessions would keep running for a while. Anyone already inside the system would remain inside until the refresh window expired. But every new request would now have to go through Northbridge's own replacement layer, if they had one. By noon, the engineering channels were burning. Why are we getting failed token refreshes? Who changed the gateway route? Can someone confirm the backup authentication provider? I did not answer any of them. At 1:15, Maya sent me a private message. They're trying to patch in a temporary login service. It passed a small smoke test, but it collapsed with 40 users. I stared at the number. 40. Tomorrow's public demo would invite hundreds at once. Caleb had wanted to prove Helix could run without me. Now he was going to get his chance. Tuesday morning came with a gray sky and a city full of rain. I was not in the office. At 8:40 a.m., I sat in my car in a quiet parking lot 2 blocks from Northbridge Dynamics. Laptop open on the passenger seat. Coffee cooling in the cup holder. I could see the top floors of the building through the windshield. Somewhere up there, Adrian Monroe was probably giving final instructions. Caleb was probably adjusting his jacket, and an entire war room was probably telling itself that confidence could replace capacity. The Helix livestream opened at 8:55. The stage looked perfect. Dark backdrop, white lights, a massive screen glowing with the Helix logo. Investors filled the front rows. Clients sat beside reporters. Everyone was waiting to see the future Northbridge had been promising for months. Adrian walked out first. He spoke about trust, speed, intelligence, and a new generation of enterprise systems. His voice was calm, polished, almost fatherly. Then he smiled and turned toward the side of the stage. And now, the person who helped lead Helix into this new era, my son, Caleb Monroe. Caleb walked out like he had already won. He smiled at the audience, made a joke about old technology slowing down modern businesses, and invited everyone to take out their phones. A QR code appeared on the huge screen behind him. Go ahead, he said. Experience Helix live. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then my dashboard began filling with signals. Not from my gateway, from theirs. Hundreds of login attempts hit Northbridge's temporary authentication layer at once. The first few sessions loaded. Caleb's smile widened. The big screen showed a dashboard appearing piece by piece. Then the errors began. Token refresh timeout. Authentication failed. Unable to connect. The live map froze in the center of the screen. A spinning circle replaced the client analytics panel. Caleb glanced toward the wings, still talking, but his voice tightened. A murmur moved through the audience. At 9:07, red error banners appeared across the demo. Caleb laughed nervously into the microphone. Looks like we have a little launch excitement. No one laughed with him. At 9:12, the live stream cut to a promotional video. At 9:26, it ended completely. By the time I reached my apartment, the first headline was already online. Northbridge Helix launch ends in live authentication failure. I stood in my kitchen, coat still on, reading the article while rain tapped against the window. The piece was short, rushed, and brutal. It mentioned the frozen dashboard, the failed mobile logins, the confused investors, and the live stream that vanished without explanation. There was even a screenshot of Caleb standing beneath the Helix logo, while a red error message glowed behind him like a warning sign. By noon, the story had spread everywhere that mattered. Tech journalists called it a public embarrassment. Industry analysts questioned whether Helix had ever been ready. Clients began asking if their data had been exposed. Competitors posted careful, professional statements about the importance of secure infrastructure, which was corporate language for, "We saw everything and we are enjoying this." Evelyn called me at 12:18. "Do not speak to anyone from Northbridge directly," she said. "I haven't." "Good. They're trying to frame this as an unexpected server outage." "It wasn't unexpected, no," she said. "It was documented, warned, and legally predictable. That matters." By Wednesday morning, 3 enterprise clients had paused implementation. 1 canceled outright. By Thursday, Northbridge's stock had dropped hard enough that financial news started using words like confidence crisis and leadership failure. Caleb disappeared from public view. His name was quietly removed from the Helix product page. His scheduled interview with a business podcast was canceled. Inside the company, Maya told me he had been removed from all launch recovery meetings and reassigned to strategic review, which sounded like a padded room with better stationery. The consultants did not last much longer. Once they realized rebuilding a non-infringing authentication and adaptive security layer would take at least 6 months, they stopped pretending this was a weekend repair. By Friday evening, 2 of them had ended their contracts. Then, on Monday morning, Adrian Monroe called Evelyn, not me. Evelyn put him on speaker, only after reminding him that the conversation was being recorded. Adrian sounded older than he had a week before. "We're prepared," he said, "to discuss licensing terms." The final agreement was signed that Thursday afternoon. Northbridge received a 3-year, non-exclusive license to use my authentication framework, my adaptive intelligence engine, and the security components they had tried so hard to pretend belonged to them. In return, they paid a number large enough to make Evelyn go quiet for 3 full seconds before saying, "Hannah, you are going to want to sit down." I did not celebrate. Not right away. I simply closed my laptop, walked to the window, and watched the city move beneath the rain. For 7 years, I had given Northbridge my best ideas, my longest nights, and the kind of loyalty companies love to praise until it becomes inconvenient to reward. I never returned to my desk. A month later, I incorporated my own company, Cole Secure Intelligence. We specialized in adaptive authentication and protected AI infrastructure, the very things Northbridge had taken for granted. Within 6 months, 2 of Northbridge's competitors became my clients, not because I begged for the work, but because they knew exactly what my technology had done. Northbridge survived, but it never recovered its old confidence. As for Caleb Monroe, I heard he left the tech world quietly. People like him always think respect is optional. They only learn its price after the bill arrives. Sometimes, the strongest answer is not a loud argument, but the quiet decision to know your worth and protect what you built. This story reminded me that dignity, preparation, and self-respect can change everything. First, I learned that no one has the right to reduce you to their first impression. Second, I learned that talent without ownership can easily be taken for granted. Third, I learned that staying calm in the face of disrespect is often more powerful than reacting in anger. Fourth, I learned that documents, evidence, and patience can protect us better than empty threats. Fifth, I learned that when people underestimate you, the best response is to rise so clearly that they can no longer deny your value. What about you? Did this story leave you with a lesson of your own? Share it in the comments, because your thoughts may inspire someone else who needs courage today. And if this story touched you, please subscribe, like, comment, and share it. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.
Welcome to Boardroom Revenge Stories, a channel focused on workplace conflict, corporate betrayal, power struggles, and quiet justice. Our stories follow a structured workflow to deliver a consistent, immersive experience. We start by analyzing real discussions on Reddit, Facebook, Quora, and blogs. Next, we craft original scripts using AI tools like ChatGPT. We then use 11 Labs to transform text into high-quality voice, and edit everything in CapCut for a smooth, cinematic finish. Thumbnails are designed with Canva, and every video is carefully reviewed before release. These stories go beyond entertainment, revealing how power truly works and how justice quietly unfolds.